Welcome, everybody, to the summer installment of the CR2C2 seminar series. This is a prelude to everyone getting excited, I hope, and gearing up for a new academic term, a new academic year. There'll be another round of seminars, a new series that starts up starting in September. You'll see that we'll begin alternating between external speakers, industry, government, and different partners, and then we're going to this time around we're going to be alternating back to CR2C2 researchers because at this point CR2C2 has been in force for a couple of years. There's been a lot of good work done, and so now it's time to do the technology transfer function of communicating some of the good work that we're doing. And so really today is kind of the first installment of that is we're going to have two CR2C2 researchers share some of the work that they've been doing this summer, or I'm sorry, that they've been doing over the course of CR2C2. We're going to go ahead and start with my old friend, Dr. Asad Khattak. Asad is the Alvin and Sally Beeman Distinguished Professor of Civil and Environmental Engineering at UT. Masters and PhDs from Northwestern, done a lot of things, written a lot of papers, journal editor for Intelligent Transportation Systems and Journal of Sustainable Transportation. And honestly, just kind of an all-around great guy. So he's going to be talking to us about some of the tools that have been developed for rural readiness for new technologies, which I think is a pretty important and impactful focus of CR2C2. So I'm going to go ahead and share your slides, Asad, and then you can raise a hand or tell me next, however you want me to do. I will be here to do your lifting. So let's go.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that kind introduction, Steve. And you've raised the bar for me, so I hope I can deliver. So this project started in the beginning. This is like project 1-1. And Jerry led this project. And then as you can see, Venktesh and Sudagar are both our close partners. And three of our students, several students worked on this, but three of them, especially graduate students, and I'm going to ask Osman to partly present some of his work, and Basit and Sohela also worked on this. So I want to recognize the team and the success that we've had with this project, which is to design these tools for assessing the readiness of rural communities for new technologies and how can they leapfrog basically the technology that they never really adopted and maybe they don't need anymore. So that's the idea or the thought behind this. Thanks, Steve. So rural areas usually are referred to as having population of less than 50,000. These can be small towns or very, very small unincorporated areas as well, 5,000 population, 10,000. So these areas, at least in the US, face unique infrastructure and technological challenges, and they require tailored solutions that may or may not be necessarily working in urban areas. So this project is meant for developing a systematic, data-driven, and technology-enabled framework to modernize rural transportation where we see opportunities and gaps. The solutions considered include emerging technology. If you can go back kindly, Stephen.
Sorry.
Yeah. So AI applications, rural intelligent transportation systems, automated shuttles, adaptive traffic signals, car sharing models, and also expanded broadband connectivity. Those are the kinds of solutions that we considered. We've developed new tools. We call this whole methodology techniques for assessing community technology readiness, stacked R, to help rural communities prepare for technological innovations. Thanks. Next, please. So this is our framework. I wish I had my pen was working, but right now it's not. So I'll just go over. On the left bottom, there is goals and performance measures, and these are meant to identify, where the problems are, what are the hotspots for traffic flow, volatility, or crashes. So this allows us, the rural area that we are talking about, there are rural planning organizations that can use this kind of help on identifying hotspots and where mobility hotspots exist. That is, people may have less mobility in certain areas. People might be disabled for various reasons, and they may need mobility, access to healthcare, so on. And on the next box are strategies and actions. These are technologies or solutions that are available, and obviously they have attributes or features that are important in terms of their impact and so on. So these are contained within our framework. The next one is the data and knowledge base, where structured and unstructured data exist. And data can be coming in from sensors, it can be coming in from surveys, it can be coming in from the performance measure that measures of the transportation system. And all this can be envisioned to be a case, a database or a knowledge base. Then we have analysis tools which have expanded dramatically in recent years. We are all aware of GPT and text mining, and we can do that kind of analysis, deep analysis with various tools, all the way to AI, like we'll give you examples of case-based reasoning, readiness tools, deep and shallow AI applications, as well as spatial analytics, which is very important. That is looking at how things work in space and time. So those are all the tools. One other thing, important thing, is the communication tools. So because we have a diverse set of stakeholders in transportation, we need communication tools. These could be to help make decisions about different alternatives, and also making, voting, ranking alternatives, and brainstorming. So those are tools that are needed within this framework. And ultimately, what we want to do is to support what is in the center of this slide, which is the analysis, the predictions, short-term, long-term predictions. We have strategic planning on 20 years horizon. We also have short-term tactical type of planning, operational planning. So all that within the context of deliberation and implementation decisions that take place within our transportation system. So this is the framework that we have developed. Now, we have tried to put this idealized kind of framework into a practical tool that is called TACT-R. So next, please. So here's just like the visualization of a user who's thinking about the problem or the issue that is faced in their rural area. It could be that, they have had flooding, or, they have had issues with weather, or issues with the traffic, so on. So they collect, as you can see on the right-hand side, background information and knowledge about potential solutions that might help them with planning. So these are shown as possible solutions. Then we can look at, okay, these solutions sound interesting, these are new, innovative, but are we ready for those solutions? Do we have the infrastructure that might be needed for readiness of a particular technology? For example, if we want automated shuttles, then maybe we need roadside units, maybe we need clear markings, road markings, and so on, so that they can travel on these roads. Maybe we need different kinds of parking facilities and access of people with disabilities, people who may have different kinds of preferences. So we come up with feasible solutions based on the readiness. And Usman is going to talk about the readiness model that we have developed based on criteria. Okay, then once we have feasible solution, we look at, say, okay, these shuttles sound interesting. What have other people done in some similar cases? So maybe there are shuttles that have been used in certain parks or in certain areas where there might be mobility issues. So what are the most similar cases to my case if I'm planning for a particular regional planning organization? And that results in candidate solutions. And then we can do benefit cost analysis, do digital twin analysis of how that solution is going to work. And that would give us the finalized solution, which we can go and implement. So all this process results in an informed decision, which we are trying to kind of envision how we go step by step and give the user relevant information. So all this is reflected in our tech tool. So if we can go to the next slide, please, Stephen. So this is a website that we have established, and it's the tool that this page shows the landing page, and basically, we talk about how rural transportation is important and what are the different kinds of issues that might be addressed by this tool. Next, please. So rural challenges, this tool provides a kind of a deeper view of what are the challenges. And, ultimately, we hope that it will provide very localized information. Right now, it provides information more generally about what are the rural challenges, which include healthcare access, low mobility, social vulnerability, traffic operation issues, safety, freight accessibility. So we have write-ups for each one of these and some visualizations. Next, please. Like we said, we're talking about what are the innovative solutions, new solutions. So this page provides people with a lot of information about what is maybe an ITS architecture for rural areas, and also for different types of emerging solutions that might be addressing some of the problems. So we'll show you some examples of these solutions that we are considering, which includes adaptive traffic signal control, ride matching, automated shuttles. Next, please. So the resources are that data and knowledge base that I talked about, and it has use cases, it has text mining information that we have collected from different studies on innovative technologies. And also North Carolina, we have data on broadband access. For Florida, we have roadway inventory data, which those are the databases. I won't be able to go into the details of all of these, but as you can see, there's a lot of information that we have been collecting over the 2 years or so that the project has been active. Next, please. So this is just a kind of a recap of all the data. We have looked at the literature. In our case, that we are talking about are use cases of automated shuttles, rideshare, and adaptive traffic signals. We looked at literature and also projects. Reports. On the right-hand side is just like what we found in the literature. Venktesh shared a good report on how automated shuttles have been implemented in different locations in the US. So the graph on the right, the figure on the right shows that. And also the figure on the bottom shows that, how Florida road inventory and also other information about sociodemographics and so on can be used for geospatial analysis road and bridge inventory data set that they have is very helpful in that. And also we have some US DOT transportation data sets about different kinds of communities and at a very small geographic level, which is the census tract. So we have collected really good data. Next, please. So going into the analysis tools, we'll give you examples of case-based reasoning and also the readiness tools that Usman has been working on. So from here on, I'll hand it over to Usman. He's a graduate student and a really good and successful graduate student working with me. So I'll hand it over to him to explain what case-based reasoning tool he has been developing. Next, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Khattak. So I will discuss the case-based reasoning tools. As Dr. Khattak has mentioned earlier, that these case-based reasoning tools provide the transportation planners with a decision-making guide that basically they tend to answer this question that if the planners are interested in the implementation of a project, let's say of automated shuttle, so basically these tools help them answer the question that who else has tried the same project. And it focuses on the similarity score of different projects based on the planner's own region of interest. And it provides qualitative and quantitative information combined. We will show you an example of this. And it says that like the users may not be familiar with the context, so it helps them familiarize with the context of these different implementation projects of innovative technology. Please go to the next slide. So here's an example. This is a tool which is embedded in the TACT-R website. This is a case-based reasoning tool for the automated shuttle projects. So basically it asks these 6 questions from the users. The first question is about selecting the vehicle type. The second question asks about select the maximum speed that the automated shuttle will operate on. It has these different, when you click on the drop-down menus, you have different options from which the users can select. Then it asks some questions about select the route type and the road type on which, like the type of road on which the shuttle is going to operate. There's some questions about the level of oversight available, whether there is some human oversight available or not, and about a question about the seating capacity of the automated shuttle. So by answering all these questions, and when the users click on the submit button, so the output appears, which is shown on the next slide. So please, if you can go to the next slide. So here you can see when you enter the details and click on the submit button, so this tool compares all the information that you have entered with a set of all the use cases that we have already fed into this tool, and it gives you a similarity score based on the inputs that you have entered. So for example, here, the inputs that we have entered, it gives the highest similarity score of 83.3% with 2 use cases of automated shuttles, which is the Teddy and Cassie. So, and we have, as a reference document, we have the project reports of these 2 documents with us. So the users can simply go to the link of that reference document and get all the relevant information for their own project. So here we have just a few examples, but we have gathered data on a lot of these automated shuttle projects that are implemented in rural areas. So this tool is basically a very nice decision-making guide that gives details to the planners about the implementation of similar projects in rural regions. Similarly, we have also developed these case-based reasoning tools for the car sharing and adaptive traffic signal control projects, which follows a similar framework, but the questions or the set of inputs are more aligned towards these 2 technologies. We have provided the links for these 2 technologies in this slide, so we won't be able to go into the details of these 2 tools, but they are all embedded in the TACT-R website, and we have provided the links. So if you are interested, you can visit these links and check these tools. Next slide, please. We have also developed the readiness assessment tools for these 3 technologies. Here, as an example, we will discuss the readiness assessment tool for the automated shuttles. So for assessing the readiness of automated shuttles, we have broadly divided the readiness assessment criteria into 4 broad criteria, which includes regulatory and legal framework, infrastructure readiness, and operational capabilities, and safety and security. And we have assigned weightages to these criteria based on the literature. So when the users go to these tools, we have a set of questions for each criteria. Like, for example, under regulatory and legal framework, we have questions related to the certification for AV shuttle operations, questions related to insurance and liability policies. For infrastructure readiness, we have different set of questions related to the roadway markings and roadway signs, vehicle to infrastructure communication, type of road surface, and 5G network availability. And the users have the option to select whether yes or no from these drop-down menus. If you go to the next slide, please. So as I discussed, we have these two additional criteria of operational capability and safety and security, and we have a set of questions that follow these criteria. Like, for example, for operational capability, we have questions related to environmental adaptability, that can the AV shuttle operate under extreme weather conditions, that is snow, fog, or storm. Or we have questions related to safety and security, that like in case of an accident, like have the emergency response teams been trained, or are there predefined protocols for emergencies? And questions related to public awareness, like has there been a public awareness campaign, and are the passengers informed of safety guidelines? So by answering all these set of questions and by clicking on the submit button, so please go to the next slide, the output will appear, which will show the readiness score for these individual components as well as the overall readiness score. And we have classified the overall readiness score into three distinct criteria, which is low readiness, moderate, and high readiness. So if the readiness score is like less than 40%, we classify it as low readiness. If it's between 40 to 70%, we classify it as moderate. And if it's above 70%, it's a higher level of readiness. So here you can see, based on the information that we have entered, the overall readiness score is 62.5%. So it categorizes this as the region is moderately ready in terms of implementation of AV shuttles. Similarly, we have these readiness tools for car sharing and adaptive traffic signal control, but we won't discuss them in detail. So we have provided the links for these tools. You can visit these tools and you can get these readiness scores for these regions. Next slide, please. So our partner team at NCANT University, they developed this rural AV readiness toolkit that has specific data for North Carolina. The good thing about this tool is that it is quite flexible in terms of the weightages of the different criteria, like physical infrastructure, digital infrastructure, and social vulnerability index. So the users have the option to customize the weightages of these different criteria and then get a more customized readiness assessment score at the county level at North Carolina. Next slide, please. And our partner team at Florida Atlantic University used this geospatial data and have developed this AV readiness tool specific to the rural communities in Florida. So it gives a very nice visualization of the rural counties in Florida about their readiness for adoption of automated vehicles. We have provided the links. You can visit these tools. So now I'll please go to the next slide. So now to conclude, I will handle the presentation again to Dr. Khattak. So over to you, Professor Khattak.
Thank you. So this is just one before we conclusions, and I know we're out of time probably, but we do want to realize that rural communities can be close-knit communities, and they have very localized interests like agriculture, small businesses, freight, tourism. So the decision making requires that those considerations should be taken into account, and the stakeholders be involved. So the tools for information sharing are under development, and in our next phase we will be developing more and more of those. How to do virtual meetings, threaded discussions, and also brainstorming about solutions, evaluation, and prioritization of alternatives. We had many ideas about small language models and so on, which we will add. We add here, but I removed them because we don't have time to discuss them. Next, please. So to conclude, this rural readiness framework plus the tools are web-based, and they are providing support for rural preparedness for emerging technologies. So the idea is to accelerate the rate of adoption of new technologies. We gave you examples of automated shuttles, but there are hundreds of different technologies that one can think about. and implement in the rural context. And we hope to work on some of that in the future, especially on the digital twin and the small language models. Also the different types of maps and localization, that's very important, and our partners have worked quite a lot on that. We also have worked on it, but due to time limitations, I couldn't get into the details of that. The TAT-R website for development of emerging technologies in rural areas is flexible, and also this is envisioned as a platform for rural planning organizations for them to invest strategically in infrastructure, for example, broadband, and also look at the community awareness and improve the readiness and deploy these different emerging technologies. So that's our our tool and our vision for how this can be done for rural areas. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you, Asad and Usman. Excellent presentation. And I think what we'll do here, let me transition here. In the interest of time, we'll go ahead and pivot to Dr. Pandey and let him present his, and then we'll try to reserve some time at the very end and sort of see if there's some collective question and answers that maybe even cut across both presentations. So again, real quickly, we'll move on. Dr. Pandey is an assistant professor of civil architectural and environmental engineering at NCA&T, master's and PhD from UT Austin. He's been doing a lot of good work since he's been there. He's been a good partner. I know he's working with some of the UA folks here. So looking forward to his presentation on optimizing rural freight systems. And Venktesh, I will turn it over to you, my friend.
Great. Thanks, Stephen. And thanks, Asad, for leading the first talk, and which kind of ties well into some of the discussion that I will also make. I'll emphasize that this is, again, joint work under Project 3.1 of the center, which is focused on looking at route-based solution methods for rural freight challenges that we face. So it's a joint work with the Dr. Evangelist Kaiser as the lead, and several other faculty and students. And credits goes to all the students who have worked on this. It's primarily their work that I'm kind of showcasing and highlighting some of the things that we have done. All right, so broadly speaking, I think we are well aware of how freight systems kind of work out, especially with their three-stage movement. So there is the first mile movement from manufacturer through distribution centers, and the middle mile where there are multimodal ways of movement from one distribution center to the others. And then finally, over the last mile, that's where they are delivered to the customers using various modal options, using especially large trucks, but also smaller, as well as like all these Amazon and other delivery services. So if we bring the lens of like what are some of the upcoming challenges, in particular in rural areas, we do see that rural areas do tend to handle a lot more of the freight movement. In particular, 71% of the mileage usage happens on rural roads. Especially for trucks, 46% of them happened over the course of the last decade, and we have also been seeing increase of 9% more increase in rural areas in terms of the freight movement of traffic. In addition, there are like unique challenges that these rural areas pose. In particular, the limitations of the options that are available to you in case there is a disruption on the main route. So this is a location for where there have been posted bridge closures, and different reports have identified these, and we are broadly aware of them, that because in rural areas things are more spread out, it brings unique challenges around finding alternatives, and especially with increasing demand in those regions as well as limited infrastructure, how do we come up with unique solutions? In particular, I feel like if I bring the specifics, weather-related delays have been significant in terms of disrupting supply chains. Accident is a bigger concern. I think rural areas are sometimes called have higher rates of congestion. So CDC even referred to them as the regions where there are like significantly higher death or death on wheels regions, followed by limited alternative routes, lack of redundancies in the transport networks, which can cause additional delays. So the focus of our work is, to address some of these specific rural issues in across southeastern United States, and looking at some of the freight challenges in particular, kind of keeping in mind some of the guidances that reports from NCHRP, et cetera, have laid out for us. So broadly in this project, we have done 3 pillars of study. So I'll just kind of paint a broader picture here, and in interest of time, talk about one of them more precisely, and then kind of give a brief glimpse of the other 2. So the first one was done as a case study in Florida, which in McClenny, Florida, where the focus was that, okay, as the products are moving between different distribution centers and supercenters, how can multi-objective trade-offs be handled in the routing of different supply chain movements? And the trick here is like, how do you incorporate multi-objective trade-offs while accounting for the additional constraints? There is a broad literature of the supply side optimization. However, the team at Florida has done an excellent job of identifying how can we optimize multiple objectives using some kind of Pareto optimal methods, and then provide guidances on which routes should these unique vehicles follow. The second case study is around optimization for limited truck parking. That's becoming an increasing concern across this United States. I mean, usually there is a higher tendency of truck parking issues in urban areas, but interestingly, there is this the borderline effect where in adjacent to urban areas, as the trucks are entering that region, usually in the periphery rural areas is where they will tend to find parking, and that leads to especially illegal parking that can lead to lots of challenges, which I'll talk about. So the lens we are bringing here is how can we do better supply side optimization, considering this dynamics of truck demand and across the movement or the state. And finally, the lens that the team at University of Kentucky has brought in is to look at like the variety of paths that these trucks follow for going from point A to point B. In particular, that knowing that if there is a high risk route, which carries a lot of truck traffic, and if it's disrupted, are there alternatives that truckers can follow? And because not all routes are designed for truck weight, so we have to be careful in how we kind of create these alternative plans. And the lens being brought there is using some network modeling approaches of distributing the truck demand, as well as kind of identifying alternate paths, etc. So I'll primarily focus on the second study. That's the one I was closely involved in, as well as briefly talk about the other 2 towards the end of it. So again, the goal is to paint a broader picture of the methods we use, what are some of the key findings, without going in the nitty-gritty details. In phase 2 of our work, we are kind of building off the momentum as well. So in a way, what we are presenting is like some of the key insights that we have found. So I'll move us through some of them a little quickly, but I'll slow down on pieces where we need to pay closer attention. All right, so let's start with like some kind of bringing nuances to truck parking issues. So in particular, if you look at the map of the percent of truckers who cite the truck parking shortages by state, a lot of those regions in Northeast and Southeast do tend to stand out compared to the rest of the US. And this has become an increasing problem, especially in the Appalachia, and this truck parking has primarily the issue happens because of 2 reasons. One, there is a limited number of spaces, and even if there are spaces available, oftentimes truckers don't know about it. So they end up, and then them usually carrying a bigger vehicle have to be like strategic about, okay, they cannot, be looping around and searching for parking like some of the urban like cars can do. So, and also the constraints posed by the driving the hours of service regulations, such as staging 30-minute break requirements, can pose additional risks for these drivers. So risks, if we don't address truck parking issues, there are issues around increased emissions of additional driving. The delays, of course, for the supply chain in itself can create a lot of issues. There is a high risk for the drivers themselves. The Jason's law, which was passed by like in 2012, was centered around the case where one trucker was sadly killed while he had illegally parked in a location. So there is a safety risk associated with a lot of the truckers, followed by the driver productivity. If they're unable to find parking and running on fatigue, this can lead to risks for others. And if you're trying to address it, like from an agency point of view, there are issues to this as well. There is sometimes public opposition and not in my backyard type of approach where people don't want truckers to park where they are located. There is inadequate funding for expanding these regions as well as limited expansions for parking. So with this overview, the specifics that we were looking at is like, okay, let's look at what all broader solutions that we can study. There are two broad categories, and intuitively, you can first try to address the information itself. Try to have these dynamic capacity science or web-based information or some kind of ITS approaches. They have been piloted in many regions, including Michigan and CDOT, etc. And there are now truck parking apps which can allow you to reserve in advance, though they have limitations that I'll briefly talk about. Then from the other lens is the supply-demand mismatch part. So that's where we are looking at, okay, if we still want to meet this increasing truck demand, we need to open more facilities. And you can do that by either partnering with existing or adapting the existing facilities, or you reopen or build new areas. So our focus was to look at how can we consider the state of North Carolina as a case study and identify where those locations can be built, and how can we also incorporate methods like reservation and pricing to distribute the demand slightly better. So here's the problem statement we dealt with. So all the dots are the existing facilities in North Carolina. These are the major interstate routes, I-26, I-40, 77, 85, and 95. And we identified potential candidates as the NCDOT-owned land parcels, which had sufficient space available and which were in this sufficient vicinity of the detour time from the corridors. And the goal was that, okay, how can we identify those candidates and then optimize the facility selection within a limited budget, solved as an optimization problem. And in addition, can we optimize the operations of each facility using some sort of a aerodynamic program? So a brief view into like the literature of this, like what is the novelty piece. So if you look at the nuances of truck demand, like there is a spatial pattern, which I earlier mentioned, that there is clustering that happens around the adjacent or say boundary of urban areas or around these borders where, like especially around country borders, truckers tend to accumulate, or around or opening of a supercenter for them. They kind of need more parking near those areas. So there are these spatial patterns that happen, followed by truck temporal patterns where there is cyclicity to it. There is more demand in the nighttime, and there are weekly variations to it considering that. So typical methods will look at, okay, we will try to estimate the demand. We will try to understand how drivers will behave and then kind of optimize in consideration of it. And our methods that we have used in this work kind of follow this. It's just that our goal is to expand it to the whole state level model. So that's where we were focusing on the novelty piece. So if you look at the literature, which I think we have listed the references here, broadly the research gaps that come up is like, okay, most of the studies either use like agent-based models or some sort of like optimization framework. They have done it in the past. However, there are some limitations around assumptions of homogeneous drivers, and the reservation models that are considered, they're relatively simplistic. I mean, that being said, simple models do work. However, our goal was to see that could dynamic reservation and address some of the unique bottlenecks, and that is also some of the lens that we are bringing from a methodology point of view. So I will mention like how we are addressing them. We are trying to bring considerations for different classes of drivers and the demand for them. Then, and considering how can multiple facilities be spatially coordinated. And so that's the nature of facility location in itself. Then solving it globally across the entire state of North Carolina, considering the limitations of budget, capacity, etc. And a part of our ongoing work is to account for dynamic relocation of supply for cancellations in Notion. So here is like a brief preview of how we estimate the demand. So first, we have different classes of truckers, some short haul truckers who are preferring to go to a rest area. So rest areas typically have just a stop, maybe a restroom, but truck stops tend to have higher amenities, like such as maybe a shower facility and a gas station and a place to rest, etc. So they do differ in that space. And then we do differentiate the short haul and long haul drivers, like how long they have to drive in that region. So then we say that the demand of the peak hour truck parking demand for every corridor segment for each class is sort of a proportional function of the truck traffic that passes through that region. So this is the truck envelope daily truck traffic, and all the other terms are the proportional terms. So the first one is the seasonal factor, the season for which there is a peak demand, followed by class-specific factors for each of the truck class, followed by facility preference factor for each class, as well as the design hour factor for like the peak hour that we are considering. So peak season and peak hour. So we are kind of applying the same AADT to DDHV type of method, but now for truck parking demand. And it's not to say that this method is our proposed method. It's something that has been developed by Federal Highway Administration in its technical report. And in fact, there were nationwide studies about how these proportions and classes vary, and we derived those numbers from that report. So these are data-driven derived methods from the report. So that gives us an estimate of truck parking demand. And here is the view for what that demand looks like for how many truckers want to park on different corridors. Of course, this demand is geospatially distributed because we have different segments located along the highway. So then the question is, okay, how do we select the candidate locations? So that's where we first developed the spatial prioritization model. First, where we kind of integrated all the data sets that were available to us through NCDOT or other portals, computed for each location a criteria. So the candidates were selected based on whether they were NCDOT owned land parcels within the 5-mile buffer of the corridors. And the criteria or the data sets used included what kind of traffic will get attracted to that facility based on the unmet demand around the segments in that region, the crash propensity relative to that facility. So again, this is a proxy factor in a way that if there is more unsafe circumstances with truckers involved around that facility, then you kind of give higher priority to that. Followed by how much capacity is available to it, proximity to existing locations or not, followed by how long, what is the detour time to go to that facility back to the highway. So we use that composite scoring method, which is a weighted score method. Like this could be further optimized by optimizing for the weights using various techniques that have been developed, but we went with a simplistic linear combination of them with equal weights assigned. I might be mistaken. I think in the revised work we had changed the weight in light of what we found in the literature. All right, so then we get to view the composite scores for each candidate facility across the entire state of North Carolina. You do see around city centers, especially around their periphery, there is a higher demand. Therefore, they get higher composite score. Clearly, we cannot just select the top 5 locations because they all can just be right next to each other, which is the essence of geospatial optimization. So therefore, we need to develop a method which can optimize this further. So that's where we propose an iterative prioritization. It's a heuristic. The idea is that you first identify all candidates, give them a criteria score, then you select the one which has the highest score. Then you reduce the budget available because you have removed some of it. Then you recalculate the unmet demand. Then check if there is remaining budget or not. If there is, then you update the scores for each candidate location, and then you repeat this process until you exhaust the budget. So this process technically can be repeated for all facilities. And this is how the variation looks like for how the number of selected facilities changes as the budget that we allocate to it increases. So we did approximate that building a new facility does require a significant amount of investment, and I think our literature guidance was $60 to $75 million. I know that sorry, $6 to $7.5 million. So therefore, you can see the budget really explodes higher. Like we are kind of reaching like 600 million to hit a specific number of facilities. However, we also tried what is the unmet demand variation as the budget allocated for truck parking is increasing. and we kind of observe that it does drop. After a point, there is a slightly incremental improvement. So you do see bigger drops up till perhaps if you can allocate a specific amount of budget. So with that said, I think there are things that can be fine-tuned, like the budget that we are allocating to each facility, etc. However, at the very least, we do observe that the methods selected 25 facilities and observed 61% reduction in the demand. There were higher demand counties saw more facilities allocated around them, and there was some kind of diminishing return. So then kind of moving on, I'll briefly point out what has been done with other work that we were doing. So the second approach was to formulate it as a mixed integer linear program instead of using the heuristic of iterative prioritization. So here again, the goal is to minimize the unmet demand with the constraints given by budgets, facility capacities, and the decision variables are which to select, which type of facility is it, and how are the truckers choosing those facilities. So I'm not going to go into detail of this method. However, we did, if I'm not wrong, we did find that it is computationally efficient. The other approach that we were also bringing was to look at, okay, let's just work with what is existing right now, not increase our additional facilities, and what can be done to improve the usage of parking in those spaces. So that's where there is a big literature on truck parking reservation. And however, the current methods do not use some sort of like kind of dynamic methods, which have shown promise in at least passenger traffic domain. However, there is a limited scope of limited research in dynamic relocation of parking capacity in truck space domain. So that's where we formulated this the reservation for each candidate location as a dynamic program. So the idea is that, okay, a trucker will arrive to a parking location, and there is a kind of a stochasticity to this. So we do this as agent-based modeling, where each truck agent has some arrival time, some duration to park, some likelihood of wanting to park in reserve. Then there is some behavior for how they choose whether to reserve or not, or whether they just show up to a location, and followed by each parking lot, like what is done in that. So I'm not going to go in the detail of how we solve it, but it's formulated as a Markov decision process with different states and transitions reward and solved using reinforcement learning methods. And as I said, this is part of some of the ongoing work. So our goal is to compare how this Markov decision process will play out relative to the iterative prioritization methods that we have outlined. So in interest of time, I'm going to move to just giving a glimpse of what was done for other case studies. So I'll take maybe 3 more minutes here. So I know this is like maybe a crash 1-minute version of the slides. The final report can be read with more details, but our partners in Florida and Kentucky looked at the rural freight optimization through different lenses. As I said, for Florida, the goal was how can you handle the routes that these truckers take, considering where they have to deliver what, and especially considering this line haul and back haul problem, like when the forward trip with carrying the goods and return trip so that truckers don't return empty. And this one, the goal was to kind of how do we optimize multiple objectives together. And just in interest of time, I'll show the high-level view of what was done as a case study. The case study was in McClenny, Florida, around a Walmart distribution center and supercenters. The key results showed that if the proposed algorithm, which was a genetic algorithm-based solution method for the multi-objective optimization is used, then there are approximately 7 to 14% cost savings compared to traditional methods. And I guess this figure shows like different routes that the truckers can follow to meet the demand while following the constraints set by the system. Okay, so then again, 1-minute version for our Kentucky study. The goal here was to look at different types of routes that are followed and the truckers follow. And the key innovation I'll emphasize here is like we typically work with FAF zones, which are bigger regions, but the team developed a method to kind of disaggregate this FAF zone-based demand to a county-based demand. So then we can actually distribute that demand on different routes across the state. So without going in too much depth, the team used the k-shortest path algorithms to distribute it across the routes, followed by a validation in the Lee County of Kentucky. So as a conclusion, we do observe that, like, okay, these spatial prioritization and spatial optimization methods do show promise in the 3 case studies. I will emphasize the takeaway that we have known that spatial optimization is practical, but I think it is especially practical for the constraints that rural areas pose around the limited alternate paths and the uniqueness of the demand and supply. So this is something that hope you all take away from it. Followed by, I think, as I said, we are continuing this work. We are addressing some of the reservation-based issues with parking, truck parking, as well as doing some more human-centered truck parking solutions, and working with agencies. So this is the technology transfer part that Stephen mentioned earlier, the idea that we want to work and develop these tools that agencies can actually use. So similar to the dashboard and ideas that Asad presented for 1.1, our goal is to do something similar for our 3.1 projects that can be helpful. All right, I'll acknowledge CR2C2 funding, and with this, I'll stop sharing and open it up for questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Venktesh. And again, thanks to Asad and Usman for good presentations and pretty darn good job of keeping time. That was basically 3 academics, put into a short time span. So appreciate that. So with that, let me open the floor to questions from the audience. As is often the case, the moderator will break the ice with questions. And Christina just reminded me as well, you're welcome to put questions in the chat as well. I'll try to monitor that and talk at the same time, given my attention span issues. So one of the things, sort of a common thing is and this gets to technology transfer and practicality of uptake of research and that sort of thing. On both ends, there's some human end users, right? The readiness tool, and for the truckers, I mean, there's for this to be useful, somebody's got to actually be willing to learn about this and bring it into their daily operations. So Asad and Usman, one of the things I would say for the readiness tool, thinking about rural planning organizations and the different what sort of anticipation of need and or training, because there's the readiness tool, but there's also the readiness to use the tool, right?
Yeah, excellent question. Thank you, Stephen. We have consulted. In fact, Jerry went to some of the conferences for rural transportation planning and found it was a bit humbling kind of a thing where they are saying, well, our considerations are more like, whether a ditch should be cleaned or not, or, these kinds of things that are important in the rural context, but are not fully reflected in some of the innovations that we are talking about. So there is a mismatch. You're right, and we need to be able to convey the message very clearly to our stakeholders, especially planners in RPOs, that we have a tool and to kind of work with them to bring them in, and that's why we put in the communication part that is we think critically important. And I think as one thinks about it, and as we become more and more spatially local issues, and be able to address those, I think we will be able to have some success with rural planning organizations and how we can improve them and bring in the user base. But right now, we were just focused on developing the tool. In our second phase, we hope to do the stakeholder in a more substantive way.
Certainly. And to be fair, my point was not to call out a mismatch. My point was to say that, I mean, that's an opportunity. I mean, technology transfer, that sort of thing. It's an opportunity to roll the tool out, but it's also an opportunity to let these communities know that there are options on the table that, like you said, they're not even thinking in this space, right? I mean, they're trying to take care of basic, Laszlo's, bottom tier needs, right? For for infrastructure. So I don't see any questions popping up in the chat. Before I keep running my mouth, any thoughts or questions from the audience? Ali, I see you pointing. Is there someone there in the room looking to?
Yes. Yes, there's someone coming.
Perfect.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. It was wonderful. I have one question. So, in your readiness assessment tool, I was seeing that we get like a composite score after we enter like values for different factors while assessing. So, I want to ask, like, do we do that like manually, and who is responsible like to assign score for each factor? Like, how do we define that how much score needs to be given to each factor?
Yeah, I think Usman can answer that better, but in general, like we are flexible on what weight is used, but we based our weights on the literature, whatever we could find, but it's flexible. I mean, you can change the weights and so on. But right now, the user is not, I think, Usman, is the user able to change weights or not? I don't know.
Yes. So in the Rural AV Readiness Toolkit that the NCANT team has developed, that toolkit has the functionality that the users are able to change the weights of the three criteria, and then they can get a different readiness score. So if the users basically don't agree with the weightages, they can customize the weightages and they can get a more customized readiness score. The readiness tools for AV shuttles, car sharing, and adaptive traffic signals that the TACT-R tool contains. So their weightages are fixed and they are assigned based on the literature. Like there were studies related to assessing readiness for smart cities or for intelligent mobilities. One of the study where was conducted by Dr. Khattak for Tennessee Department of Transportation. So in our literature search, like same weightages were used for some of the components like infrastructure, physical infrastructure or digital infrastructure. So those weightages are taken from that literature. But to clarify, like the AV Rural Readiness Toolkit for North Carolina, which focuses specifically on North Carolina, it has that customized weighting option available. But the other three readiness tools that we discussed, for now, like their weightages are fixed, but we can have that functionality where the users can modify the weightages and then see the readiness as well.
One small thing that I do want to add is that, our team of different universities worked perfectly, almost ideally. And I really want to thank Venktesh and their students for participation. Really, it was such a nice experience.
Excellent.
Thank
Excellent.
you.
Well, so listen, we're at the top of the hour, and Asad, I don't know that I could have come up with any better language to close this out than, I mean, I think what you just said is great. I mean, this is what the UTC is about. It's a consortium, it's collaboration. There are a couple of comments and questions that have popped up in the chat while others were talking. The great thing about this being an internal seminar, largely internal seminar. We all know each other when we work together. So Muhammad and Venktesh and the questions that are happening here. If you didn't have a question, we're all part of CR2C2. So reach out to the individual researchers. Reach out to student peers. We have a student leadership council, and we've gone to great lengths to coordinate and bring our students together so that they can exchange ideas and all that. So let's keep this conversation going. I appreciate it again. Thanks to Ali and Christina for making sure that everything went off without a technological hitch and all. I appreciate that. Asad, Usman, and Venktesh, again, very, very, very good job. Look forward to more CR2C2 presentations, and there will be more seminars announced as we roll into the fall and we keep the seminar series going. So thank you to everyone.
Thanks, Stephen.